Hello, welcome back to Wisdom Personified, Conversations with Dudu Msomi. I hope you have an amazing 2019. We are hoping to bring amazing minds to your, whether you're watching it on your cell phone or your television. And today my guest is Teddy Daka. He is the global chair of Aurecon and the CEO of Etion. He's an amazing mind. From the first time I met him, I was like hooked. So, Teddy, thank you so much
for the time.
I'm just thinking, you spent some time in exile, and I'm just wondering what part-times you kind of engaged in as a child. But also, do you think the way you were brought up has shaped the person you are? And how has it shaped the person you are?
I actually think that every person is shaped by their past histories, some of which before they were born themselves, being passed on through the genes and through family and all that. I had polio when I was young, and I think that has shaped my life even more than the geographies that I've stayed in. Being a child with polio, my mother had to make sure I become somebody. In those days, born in the 60s, mid-60s, it was a question of what options do you have. You can't do manual labor as a result of your disability, so boy, you gotta study your books.
That brain.
And books I did. So I was more of a
And we are
nerd.
very grateful. I mean, it's not a positive thing to get, but we're grateful that that brain was manufactured.
Actually, it is a positive thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strange way of putting it, but I'm glad that, when I was young, I had this disability.
Yeah.
Because it taught me to do things that probably I wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
For instance, being a young disabled person, people treat you as if you're a leper. So your sense of identity begins to develop whilst you're very young. And I am different. When you go play soccer or you play with the kids, at school they say sit down and the other kids have to play. And you begin to think, it's not like these days where, you get the Olympics for, disabled people and all that. That stuff
was a different
was not
world.
there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it shaped my thinking, and I spend most of my time reading a lot, trying to understand why me, or what's the philosophy of life.
Yeah.
And my whole career actually is shaped as a result of that.
Yeah. In those moments, what vision did you have for your life? And what you're living now, is it what you envisaged? Is it better? Is it worse? What do you still need to achieve?
Well, I said when I was still, by the time I got to my teens, I had probably read quite a lot of books on philosophy, and I've read Bible and all other religions, and I figured out for myself that asking the question, what is the purpose of life, is the wrong question, because that assumes that life has a consciousness of its own that it can decide. So I decided, for as long as I'm alive career-wise, I'll try and do 4 things and make meaning of my life. First, I said I want to work for not-for-profit. I want to work in a corporate environment. I want to be an entrepreneur and start business. And I want to retire as an academic. I've done the first 3, and I'm doing my PhD at the moment. So
and your focus is what?
I'm actually interested in how institutions shape what we do, where we're going, or what happens in life. Because I do believe that if you listen to most of the Western ideas on management, is competitive advantage is from technology, brands, and things like that. But you get companies that don't have that and they do well. Take the former SAB Miller, for example. There's no superior technology, there's no superior brand that they have, but they've succeeded and become this large, big multinational business. So that's an area that I'm interested in. Yeah,
that'll be interesting to read when you're done. And you're going to help me craft my PhD topic, I hope.
I'm there to help anybody who asks for my assistance.
It's overdue. What do you think your value proposition is? What's unique about you in a space?
I'm not so sure if there's something really unique about me, but what I do try and do in my day-to-day living, my interactions with people, at the end of the day, on a net basis, must be a positive experience. I'm not an angel. I step on people's cons. I do all sorts of bad things without wanting to do so. But I also do good. And I do hope that my good outweighs the negative things. So on a net basis, if I can make a difference in somebody's life, a positive one, in my view, I'd have achieved something for that day. And
you do. I mean, the first time I met you, I was stuck because I think there was a speaker that didn't show up. And it's my first meeting, and you kind of move things around and you were there. So even when you don't know somebody, It seems like you just want to touch people in a positive way. You are said to have a proven track record in terms of creating growth through mergers and acquisitions. I hope that's true from what I hear. What do you think is something that we undermine when we're doing mergers and acquisitions that makes people not achieve the value that they were seeking to achieve?
I think the question of culture, although we talk about it, it's something that I don't think people pay lots of attention to it.
Yeah.
Here you find an entrepreneurial business that is doing extremely well, and you acquire it, and the first thing you start doing is to change the people, change the way they work. In fact, you begin to change the DNA of that company.
The very reason you want to.
Actually, you bought them. And it's usually at a cultural level where people miss the boat. I spend a lot of time with my team trying to understand what makes this company tick, what really makes it tick, and how can we harness that, nurture it, and also learn from it. So it's not a question of we have acquired you and therefore we own you. It's a question of we have come together, there's lots we can learn from you, there's a lot you can learn from us, let's share this knowledge now that it's a bigger pool. I believe in the power of the markets. The markets will determine the share price. So in the same with knowledge, the more people together you talk and you do stuff, the more you learn a lot and the more you become better.
But culture is usually the back end, because it's after the balance sheet have married that we worry about people.
I actually do it the other way around. Culture for me should be at the front end. I think, as they say, culture will eat strategy anytime. It doesn't matter how good your strategy is. If you've got the wrong culture, you'll be unable to implement that strategy that you have. So culture for me is right up front. Yes, the numbers have to be right, but culture has to be up front. Because if you get the cultures wrong, the businesses will not work, and then you're going to begin to start to destroy value. Business is about people. People are at the apex of any organization. Your competitive advantage comes from how you lead your people. So if you get the culture wrong, how are you going to lead? It becomes a huge problem, not for yourself, but also for the acquired business. And in the end, you create discomfort that was not necessary in the beginning.
And you destroy value.
Indeed.
You are global chair of Aurecon.
Yes.
You know, chairs are experiencing some challenges in this corporate governance terrain. What wisdom can you share with other chairpersons, whether they're aspirant to establish, that you've kind of learned in your role that you think is valuable when you're leading a board?
First of all, as a non-executive director of any company, the saying goes, stick your nose and keep your little fingers out, because that's very important.
Okay, I've never heard that one before. Okay.
Because sometimes people forget that there's a management team that you've put in place to run the business, and your role as a board is to provide oversight. Obviously, is to also provide supervisory assistance if it's necessary, and also to provide the vision and direction and assist the management to take the business forward. Now, in a chairman's role, the chairman comes with all what the non-executive has to do, but there's something else different that the chair has to do. He sets the tone, or she sets the tone. And if you don't set the right tone as the chairman, it affects the board and it can affect the entire organization. It always starts from the top.
And looking at the corporate scandals that we've been having, you know, how could those chairs have done things differently? So just as an example, we look at Steenhoff.
Well, my view of leadership is that for you to be a leader and occupy a position of leadership, if I ignore the rank side of it, or the title that you hold, a leader is a person with high character. A leader is a person who makes decisions in the interest of the organization or the community in which they live. They are there to advance humanity, to make the world better. So your decisions deliberately they're there for the organization, not for yourself. If leaders or people occupy leadership positions have that at the back of their mind, the chances of governance going wrong becomes less, because you're not deciding in your self-interest. You're deciding in the interest of the organization. And I think if you look at Steenhoff, things went off in that direction. What we're reading in the papers now is that, you know, the people that in a leadership position were now making decisions in their own name.
Yeah, and that's the core of what corporate governance is, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed.
What tips can you give, especially management that's not at executive level, especially junior to middle management? What tips can you give in terms of having difficult conversations? Because most people don't want to rock the boat because it shortens your career life in a corporate. But in the work that I do in leadership, I find there's a lot of frustration in the junior to middle management level in terms of how they engage with executives. How can you help them? What wisdom can you share there?
First of all, it is a difficult conversation to have, especially if you're a junior person talking to your boss, or even a colleague or somebody that reports to you, if you have to give them information that probably they would not like to hear from you. But the Norwegians have an expression, I'll spare you the Norwegian, but said in English, you have to put the fish on the table, clean it, and have a good meal. Okay. If you keep the fish under the table, it will rot and it will end in tears. Nobody will be happy. So just keeping the fish under the table or boiling deep down does not work. You have to have those difficult conversations. And there's a starting point for it. First, you have to create the platform. If you're coming in as a leader in an organization, what I try and do all the time without fail, establish the rules of engagement, establish expectations and how we're going to work together. Whether it's my boss or it's somebody that works for me, what are my expectations, how are we going to work together? Once that has been understood, difficult conversation come about because somebody is deviating from what you had a conversation. No matter how small, once you see we're moving outside those boundaries, that's when you should raise it. Now we tend to leave things until there's such a big thing to deal with. But either way, you still have to deal with it. After all, what really do you have to lose? Chances are you may lose your job, but you haven't lost yourself. Sometimes it's necessary that you're in a position where you can sacrifice a little bit for yourself. And if you go through that, in my view, other decisions and conversations becomes easier to have. But the bottom line is create the platform for that conversation and talk. If it's your boss, it always helps to try and get that person in what I call a neutral environment. Don't go to your boss's office. I think it's inadvisable and have a difficult conversation when he's sitting in this normal chair in his position of authority.
Power,
just why don't you invite him for a coffee? Cafeteria or outside where you sit as just people and express your feelings. No judgments. Express your feelings. This is what I feel when you do X, Y, and Z, and this is bothering me. Am I missing something? And ask questions, as opposed to say, you being judgmental, you being this, because that invites the other person to simply move into defensive mode, and I don't think you move forward.
And then they close up. What's the most courageous decision you've ever taken? And what was the outcome of that?
When I look back, for some people it will look like, oh, that was a very simple decision, but for me it was really courageous. I left formal employment in 2000. At that point, I was a single dad. My son was 4 years old. My daughter was about 11. And I resigned a job without another job, without any prospect of doing anything else, other than the fact that I had this belief that it's now my time to do the entrepreneurship. Remember what I said earlier, not-for-profit, corporate, now entrepreneurship, and run a business and start, and that's exactly what I did. It was my time, it was something I had to do, and I left my job. I mean, I recall my colleagues saying, are you crazy? You're just about to become this other person. I was already a senior executive in the organization, but for me it was like, nah, I gotta do this.
I understand those kinds of, but I don't have as many responsibilities as you do. Our country has been going through, or should have been going through, transformation since 1994. Especially in the corporate arena, we sometimes feel that there's something standing in the way. There are obstacles. What are leaders not doing right? Why do you think they're finding it so difficult to really create this new South Africa that we've been wanting?
My comments are limited to those areas where I think things have gone wrong, because I do believe there's a lot of people who are doing amazing things to get this country to move forward. where things have gone wrong, in my view, I question the sincerity to transformation. On both sides of the aisle, if I may put it that way, whether you're black or white, as long as in leadership, sometimes I question the sincerity of whether do these people really want to transform or not. If you meet leaders that express, in fact, one said something like this to me about 4 weeks ago, you guys, you're level 1 and you're doing this, but I'm not seeing the government contracts. That already rings a bell. Where's the sincerity in that leader?
Yeah.
Are we doing transformation so we can get government contracts? Are we doing transformation because we have to do a transformation? This is for us. So I question that, the sincerity, and I think that's where things go wrong. I do believe that if many people are quite sincere about it, they will find a way to make it happen. Just like you can find a way to make anything happen within business. Why transformation is supposed to be elusive, I don't get it.
Yeah.
When I started getting involved in this business, after doing some amalgamations and things like that, we were level 6. I mean, 3 years ago, we were level 4. We were level 1 today. It's actually doable. It's not that difficult the way people try and make it to be difficult. We have to remind ourselves that for you and I to sit on this chair and have this conversation, a lot of people they died for us. They sacrificed. They were maimed. And now for us to sit here and forget that that's where we come from, that we're in this environment today because did this for us, for me, it's just like being disrespectful to those that took that actually took the ultimate prize. So I question the sincerity of most people.
I must say I don't have to look outside because my sister, Mildred Msomi, she gave up her life at 21. So every day I wake up, I understand that, that it was not in vain. So it's not theory for me. I get exactly what you're saying. In terms of South African leaders, business leaders, is there one that you admire? And why do you admire that particular person that you're going to tell me about?
I generally admire people that, despite the odds against them, they have to go through adversity to get to where they are, and they kind of make it. Those people, I'm attracted to them and trying to understand how did they stay on point? How did they just continue growing despite what they were facing? So you look at Daphne Nkosi, for example. I mean, she almost lost a company when people even tried to steal it from her. Now she's a leading woman running a mining group. You take Old Man Maponya, good businessman. I mean, when we did not have BE to help us, or the PPFA to help us, or even access to funding, but somebody developing a business empire to the level where it is what it is today, that I find quite admirable. But despite people necessarily, as in leadership, I learn from almost every single person I meet, because I tell myself, I think it's Bruce Springsteen will say this in his biography, you have always to think that the person next to you is more important than what you think.
Yeah, we all
and vice versa.
Yeah.
And once you do that, you open yourself to learning from other people. I'm not an engineer myself. I never trained in any technology, but I run a tech business.
Yeah.
Why? I listen to the young engineers or anybody in the company. I speak to them, and these are the people that teach me of what's going on.
Yeah.
So I learn from almost everybody that I interact with.
This is a perfect segue of the thing that I wanted to ask. I believe that the 21st century, the two most important currencies are trust and security. You are the CEO of Etion. This is your space in terms of digital technology solution provider. That's what you do.
Yes.
In the context of South Africa, how do you think we view digital trust? Or are we still stuck in the question of access, just people having access? Because you look at all the things that have been happening globally around data, privacy and hacking. In South Africa, we're really not engaged in those conversations.
We're a little bit romantic about engaging in the digital space. We are at the access level.
Yeah.
We somehow forget that whereas in the past you could lock your file in an office, lock the building and go, now all your company documents are in your hands, and there are no locks and keys. And you romanticize that there's no industrial espionage. We romanticize that there's no cyber warfare. We romanticize that people that we give our personal information, when they say they'll keep it private, they actually will. In most cases, they don't. Most of the platforms, social media platforms that we use, collect information about us every day. We interact with that. We post even things that we should not be posting, information that should be private, because we trust that this platform I'm using, they will be responsible with with the use of that information. History has proved that they're actually not responsible. You get situations where either they are hacked and all that information is put out, or they're actually complicit in collecting your data and then selling it. Yeah. As the saying goes, if it's free, you're the product. So you're just giving your information away. It's actually quite dangerous. And I think we need to come up with better policies in how we can protect data. We need to think very carefully where we buy some of these technologies. It's not by coincidence that some countries would say, this company from this other place, we don't want you to do work with us because you think your devices are spying on us. I mean, we all have mobile phones that are not manufactured here, and they collect information about us all the time. Who's using that data? And to what end are they using that data? To what extent do we check all the technologies that we buy, whether they are consistent with what we're trying to do as a country and how we can protect ourselves? That is why part of what we do in our company is cybersecurity. Yeah. We actually go out of a way to create trust in transaction by using cryptography to protect people's identities, to protect people's information, so that it cannot be used for nefarious reasons.
Yeah. In South Africa, I'm not quite sure that we have really taken the fourth industrial revolution seriously. A lot of us are still studying humanities, social sciences. In terms of STEM careers, it's not like our mantra, which worries. I worry in terms of our competitive edge.
Yes. I'm not concerned about studying humanities. I think if we're going to produce people that only study science and science only, and we ignore the humanities, we may end up producing robots of people.
Shouldn't we integrate that?
But what I'm concerned about is the overemphasis on humanities at the expense of STEM skills that we need to do. So,
how can we change that?
Well, it's the usual thing. It starts at changing the curriculum at school. I'm glad now to hear that they're introducing coding at primary school level.
Yeah, that's great.
We have no choice but to do so. And you're quite correct to say that when it comes to Industry Version 4, we haven't really thought of it very broadly as a country. Some countries have put up these Industry Version 4 councils at government level to try and deal with these issues. I mean, look at us, what we're trying to do. We get excited that we're going to have another investment for manufacturing or extension of a combustion engine motor vehicle. Reality is that most of these investments are coming from countries that they are saying themselves by 2030 no combustion engines. Yeah. So we're getting old technology as opposed for us to leapfrog. Beyond that.
Which is an opportunity.
And it's an issue. It's an issue for us. We can leapfrog. We have proved that we are very good as a country on electronics in South Africa, extremely good at it. Our engineers, our solutions are sold worldwide. The problem is we're not getting the level of support that we need to get locally. It's almost like you have to make it outside for you to make it internally. Okay. Our cybersecurity business, just as an example, 95% of our income is from international, not locally. Because the Maybe it's Afrophobia, as some people say. But there's a lot that we can do, and I'm sure that if we change the curriculum and we put more focus on STEM skills, of course combined with the humanities, I would like to see any engineering degree to have a course or two in humanities. And vice versa, I would like to see all this. We have to combine these things, because as a person living in the world, you live with all these kind of things that you have to engage with. You need that to move forward.
You need integrated.
We have to do that. I don't think we have a choice as a country.
Just talking about local industries and local companies, in South Africa, it's been muted for a while that companies are sitting on cash. I don't know if you buy into that perception. If that's the case, how do you think President Ramaphosa is going to be able to convince foreign direct investment to come into the country if local companies are not seeing value in investing here?
There's debates either way whether they are doing it or not doing it. But I don't think it matters. Let's work on the assumption that there is lots of cash that is sitting, with reserves, and companies are not investing. The reason why you would not invest is because you have no confidence that if you make an investment into this area, you're going to have your return. So the starting point is to create that confidence. The past 8 years or so, 10, we have come up with policies that has not been investor friendly. There's this big gap that we have created between business and government. Both sides, played it negatively.
Instead of coming closer.
Indeed. You cannot have business without government. Any lawless state, you cannot have business that work. And you cannot have government without business, because you have to tax. Governments don't necessarily create jobs. They create an enabling environment for jobs. So we need each other, and we also need civil society. So before we can even look outward to get investment, the starting point, how investor friendly, I'm talking about domestic investment, how investor friendly have we made our country? And in my view, there's a lot that we need to do to try and bring about confidence in the environment. This, take spectrum. For the past 10 years, we've been talking about releasing new spectrum. We haven't done it. How do people then invest in that environment? Had we released more spectrum, as you saw in the media reports now, we could easily halve the cost of data. But we haven't done that. The question is why? It's such a simple thing. And
it's more expensive in South Africa, even as compared to other African countries.
Well, almost in the world. We run one of the most expensive data costs in the world, simply because of policy. If we change our policies, then we can do that. So whether they're holding cash or not, the question is, is the environment that investor friendly? I don't think people want to hold on to cash. You don't get a good return on cash. If you invest it, and you know that you're going to have a reasonable return, that's fine. This thing that is developed in a couple of years, where business is seen as bad in its totality, I think we need a rethink as a country. We all need each other. We need business, we need government, we need civil society. It's not an either or. It's what we need as a country together.
I know you mentioned the 4 things that you're working towards now, being doing a PhD and then being an academic. You're going to be my professor, I suppose, in the future. But what else is on your bucket list that you still need to achieve?
I've always wanted to do nothing.
Okay, I didn't see that one coming. Just sit and do nothing.
It's not a bad thing. I'm not the kind of person who would make a lot of money, buy a big boat yacht and travel around the world with a glass with umbrellas on it. Not the kind of person. But I also would like to see myself do what I call nothing. And nothing simply means spend more time on the social side of life, spend more time in seeing how I can assist people differently than what I've done so far. I think I miss my not-for-profit days. So even if I'm going to transition myself more into academic type work, but I think I'll be doing more philanthropy than what I've done.
Okay.
There's more to do on the philanthropic side.
I like that. Any other wisdom you want to share as we close our conversation?
There's a lot I'd like to share, but the most important thing for me is We are our people. And every person, every single person deserves the joy of life. I shouldn't be the person to make it difficult for you to enjoy the joy of life. I should be the person who helps you enjoy that joy of life that you deserve. That's why I said earlier on, in all my interactions with people, I always hope on a net basis it's been positive and you enjoy the joy of life as well.
I mean, really, people, you know why I'm speaking to him. This has been our conversations with Dudu Msomi, and I've just had a conversation with Teddy Daka. Until next time.